There's a moment that almost no one admits to. Not out loud, at least. It's a silent moment. It can happen in the middle of the night. It can happen during a typical Wednesday lunch. It can happen in the middle of a conversation that seemed normal. Exhaustion arrives softly, without warning, without drama. It's not anger. It's not indifference. It's that inner weariness that comes from only one thing, no longer knowing how to fit in with someone you love, but who always seems to be one step beyond your reach. And then comes the thought you don't want to have. Maybe it would be simpler to just leave. If you have a Virgo in your life, or if you've ever had one, you know exactly what that's like. That person who notices what no one else notices, who cares in a way that sometimes feels like demanding, who loves with an intensity that comes disguised as requirements, as silence, as a gaze that analyzes everything without explaining anything. The world has learned to call that difficult, and for a while, maybe you did too. But there's a question that will linger throughout this video. A small question, but one that changes everything when you really stop to listen to it. What if what you called difficult was actually the rarest thing you've ever experienced? Virgo isn't a sign. Virgo is a phenomenon, and phenomena don't fit into easy descriptions. They disturb, they reveal, they arrive in your life exactly when you need something you don't yet know how to ask for. And the way they deliver that, something rarely seems like a gift at first glance. It seems like pressure, it seems like distance. It seems like a love that doesn't know how to be gentle. But there's a huge difference between a love that doesn't know how to be kind and a love that refuses to be fake. And that difference, that specific difference, is the heart of what this video is going to show you. Because Virgo operates on a level that most people take years to decode, not out of a choice to be mysterious, but because she carries with her a level of perception that even frightens herself. She sees what's wrong before it appears. She senses what's wrong before the mistake happens. And when she tries to talk about it, she often can't find the right way. So she filters, analyzes, keeps it to herself. And what finally comes out seems like criticism, when in reality it was care, trying to find the right opening to reach you. Think about it for a second. How much care can be disguised as nagging? How much love can be hidden within a silence you mistook for indifference? And what exists within Virgo that no one can explain? The weight she carries, the constant calculation between what she feels and what she thinks is safe to show. When you understand this, not by what she says, but by what she does when no one is watching, you begin to see a devotion that is unparalleled. A devotion that doesn't seek the spotlight, that doesn't need recognition, that simply acts. Because what she does without anyone seeing is where the Virgin Mary truly exists. Virgo doesn't tell you what she carries. That's the first thing you need to understand about her, not as a flaw, not as a closed-mindedness, but as an internal code she can't always name. A code that says, if I show the weight, I'll turn the weight around. And she refuses that with all her might. So what does she do? She solves problems before you even realize there was one. She organizes before you feel the chaos. She anticipates before you need to ask. And she does all this without announcing it, without expecting recognition, without keeping score. The world calls it control. It calls it anxiety. It calls it neurotic perfectionism. But the real name, the honest name, is service. It's a love that expresses itself through action before it expresses itself through words. A love that prefers to build rather than declare, that prefers to be present rather than to be remembered. Think of a foundation. You enter a building, feel the firm ground beneath your feet, climb the stairs, trust the elevator, and don't think for a second whether the structure will hold. Why? Because there's a foundation you've never seen, that you probably never will see, but it's there, calculated, built, reviewed 1,000 times, supporting everything you use without realizing it. Virgin is the foundation. And like any foundation, the more invisible it is, the better it is made. What she keeps inside while doing all this is another story, because Virgo feels a lot, feels deeply, feels with a precision that sometimes frightens her. But for her, the process of feeling first goes through the filter of analysis. What do I do with this? This is rational. Will expressing it now help or complicate things? And when the expression finally comes, it arrives transformed, more contained, more precise, much less inflamed than it was inside. And those on the outside see the result of this filter and think she didn't feel anything, but she felt everything. But she chose to protect you from the volume. This is love, a love you may never have received from anyone in such a complete way. A love that doesn't need validation, that doesn't demand immediate reciprocation, that doesn't scream when it's in pain. That simply continues, day after day, without speeches, without a stage. And there's a language within that love that most people go through life without learning to read. Virgo writes with actions. She writes with the lunchbox she left ready before you arrived hungry, with the message she sent at the right moment, with her silent presence in the hours when all you needed was not to be alone, with the care that arrived unannounced, without asking for anything in return, without even waiting for you to notice. It's a letter, a long letter, written with depth and care, except it's in a language no one taught you to read. And the problem isn't that she doesn't know how to love. The problem is that the world hasn't taught anyone to recognize love when it doesn't come packaged in easy declarations. What happens to someone who loves like that, deeply, concretely, quietly, and is rarely recognized for it? What happens inside someone who carries so much for the one they love and doesn't feel the weight being shared? This has a name, and it's heavier than it looks. Virgo absorbs what's wrong before it becomes a problem, absorbs the tension of the situation before you need to feel it, absorbs your flaws without announcing that she saw them, because she noticed, of course she noticed, but decided that pointing out the mistake now wouldn't help you. So she kept it inside, processed it, waited for the right moment, or simply let it go because her concern for you was greater than the need to be right. Imagine a filter, a water filter that absorbs everything that would be impurities so that what reaches you is clean. The filter doesn't shout that it's full. It simply continues filtering until it can't anymore. What if what you called coldness was actually the most generous act someone has ever done for you in silence? There's a paradox at the heart of Virgo that most people take too long to understand, and when they finally do, it's usually accompanied by a tightness in the chest, a feeling of, I should have seen this sooner. When Virgo criticizes, it's not because you failed. It's because she believes you can do better, and more than that, she believes you deserve the best. Virgo's criticism is a declaration of faith. She's saying, without words, that she knows you're capable of more, and that she won't lie to you by saying that this is already enough just to spare you the discomfort of growing. This hurts. Of course it hurts. Receiving faith wrapped in demands is one of the hardest gifts to hold on to. But think of a surgeon, a real surgeon, who will operate on a part of you that is diseased. He has no patience for gentle lies. He will open, clean, reconstruct, with precision, with rigor, with the sole objective that you leave there more whole than when you entered. And when you wake up from surgery, what you have is not the procedure, which was invasive and frightening and which you don't want to repeat. What you have is the result, the health that didn't exist before. Virgo operates like this. She only criticizes those she believes can be saved, improved, elevated. She only invests where she believes the investment will pay off. And when she stops pointing out what's wrong with you, when the silence changes tone and the demands disappear, it's not because she's reached peace, it's because she's concluded that that space no longer has room for her. When Virgo falls completely silent, it's not silence, it's goodbye. And now that you know this, now that you understand that the criticism was faith disguised as a demand, that the demand was love afraid of being superficial, what do you do with everything she ever tried to tell you? This understanding that Virgo's demand was, at its core, a declaration of faith in you, is one of the most unsettling and liberating at the same time, because it changes everything. It changes how you receive what she says. It changes how you respond. It changes what you can build together when you stop listening to the words and start listening to what lies beneath them. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, delves precisely into this layer. It explores this Virgo nature, this ability to see potential where others see problems, to love through refinement, to carry expectations that are, in fact, a map of how much she believes in the person beside her. Understanding this changes not only how you see her, it changes how you see yourself being loved by someone who doesn't accept lesser versions of who you can be. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a dimension to this story that goes beyond personality. It goes beyond any explanation that psychology alone can provide. It's a dimension you may have already felt, but one that is rarely put into words without sounding too vague. Why did this particular person come into your life? I'm not talking about coincidence, not circumstance, not scheduling conflict. I'm talking about purpose, about something that, when you look back honestly and without haste, makes sense in a way that's hard to ignore. Virgo doesn't appear in your life to decorate. It appears to reveal, and what it reveals isn't always pretty to face. Sometimes it's exactly what you were avoiding, what you were pretending wasn't urgent, what you were sweeping under the rug because it was too uncomfortable to bring to the surface. And she arrives with that analytical gaze, with that demanding care, with that presence that leaves nothing unfinished, and begins to unearth exactly what you needed to confront, not out of cruelty, as a mission. The oldest spiritual traditions speak of a type of person that moderns call a soul catalyst. It's not someone who gives you what you want. It's someone who activates what you need. Someone who sets in motion within you something that was stagnant, crystallized, waiting for someone brave enough or incapable of looking the other way to stumble upon it. Virgin is that catalyst. And when you ask why God placed that specific person in your life, the answer you'll find isn't in what they gave you, it's in what they activated. What did you start demanding of yourself after that? What have you stopped accepting after living with someone who doesn't accept mediocrity? What did you discover about your own worth after being loved by someone who doesn't know how to love halfway? These questions are not rhetorical. They are a map of what this presence represents in your story and what you would be leaving behind if you left before understanding its purpose here. Now I want you to think of a specific moment, a moment when you almost gave up, when the exhaustion was real, the distance seemed insurmountable, and you sincerely wondered if it wouldn't be easier to just give up. Maybe you're still in that moment right now. Maybe that's exactly when you came across this video. And the question I want to ask you isn't whether you should have stayed or not. It's a different one that demands honesty. What would have happened to you if that person had never stayed? Think about what has changed since Virgo entered your life. Not what you gained in an obvious way, what has transformed within you, what has hardened where it needed to harden, what has softened where it was too rigid. What have you come to demand of yourself because you lived with someone who doesn't tolerate superficiality? That person who seems difficult to hold on to. They've been holding on to parts of you that you didn't even know were loose. Sometimes the most important gift of our lives arrives wrapped in a way that we don't recognize as a gift. It arrives with rough edges, with demands, with a love that doesn't let you stand still, that confronts you, that bothers you, that rejects the lesser version of yourself that you were willing to accept. And it's only when you stop, truly, without rushing, without defense, that you can see the magnitude of what you've been receiving all along. What part of you still exists because it stayed? Which version of you would not exist if she hadn't appeared in your life at that exact moment? These questions about what remains of you, what has been purified, who you have become because she was here, are exactly the kind of clarity that Virgo herself also needs to find about herself, and that those who are by her side need to find about their own path. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, explores an angle that few delve into: Virgo's spiritual discernment. This ability, when aligned with their deepest purpose, allows them to precisely separate what is essential from what is noise, to see the path clearly where others are still trying to understand the problem, to be, for themselves and those around them, an anchor point amidst the confusion. This book is about activating this clarity, not as a technique, but as a rediscovery of what Virgo has always known how to do, and which, sometimes in the weariness of daily life, they themselves forget they possess. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Not giving up on a Virgo isn't an act of infinite patience. It's not about self-annihilation. It's not about abandoning who you are to fit into the space she defines. It's a choice made with clarity. It's about waking up to the fact that some connections aren't difficult because they're too superficial. They're difficult because they're too deep. And depth demands something from you. It demands that you also refuse to stay on the surface, that you also be willing to face what is uncomfortable, to receive what comes wrapped in demands, but which inside is devotion, to trust in a love that knows no other way of existing than being completely real. Virgos don't know how to love halfway. They haven't learned it. That option isn't available to them. When they're with you, they're with you. With all the perception they have, with all the care they can offer, with all the demands of someone who believes you deserve the best and won't pretend that anything less is enough. In a world full of disposable connections, of relationships that last only as long as they are convenient, of people who disappear at the first sign of difficulty, of loves that dissolve at the first sign of discomfort, having a Virgo by your side means having someone who chose to stay, not because it's easy, but because you're worth the effort. She knows the cost. She knows that this love demands something of her as well, and she stays. This deserves to be seen. It deserves to be recognized. It deserves that you, at least once, look at this person without the lens of weariness and clearly see what they have been silently doing for you all this time. God doesn't place people in our lives by chance, and those who arrive with more weight don't come to weigh us down. They come to show us where we are still capable of growing, where we can still go, what can still be activated within us if we accept the invitation to stay instead of leaving. Virgo is that kind of presence, the one that bothers you not out of malice, but out of commitment, the one that challenges you not out of arrogance, but out of faith. The one that stays, not because it's easy to stay, but because deep down, you were always worth every moment of their presence. Everything narrated so far, Virgo's commitment to what is real, this absolute refusal to love halfway, this silent faith she places in those she chooses, is also a mirror. An invitation for you to discover what you are capable of being when someone believes in you in this way, and when you begin to believe in yourself with the same intensity. The digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, is that next step. Not as a list of generic advice, but as a real dive into what it means to live aligned with the deepest purpose of your sign. In the case of those who are alongside Virgo, and in the case of Virgo itself, it opens the perspective of understanding how this presence fits into the bigger picture of each person's story. Because when you understand the purpose, you stop resisting the process. And when you stop resisting, you begin to receive what this presence has always had to offer you. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Virgo arrived carrying things she doesn't yet know how to properly name. A way of seeing the world that seems demanding, but is, in fact, a very particular form of love. A presence that weighs heavily, not because she wants to burden you, but because she herself weighs heavily, because she feels everything, because she cares in a way that doesn't have a low volume, that doesn't have a light version, that doesn't know how to pretend everything is okay when it's not. And in the end, after everything, after the exhaustion, after the misunderstanding, after the questions that remained unanswered for a while, what you have before you is this: a person who stayed, who didn't leave when it got difficult, who continued day after day being exactly who she is, without disguise, without performance, without smaller versions of herself to fit into spaces that weren't ready for her. This is rare. Rare in a way that can only be understood when you stop comparing it to what is easy and start comparing it to what is real. You've made it this far in this video, and that means you already know enough to look at this person differently. To see not the difficulty, but what the difficulty was wrapping up all along. To understand that the weight you felt wasn't an obstacle. It was the gift arriving in the only way she knows how to deliver it. Don't give up on this person, because she never gave up on you.